I'd like to say good evening to everyone. It's wonderful to have everybody here at this meeting of the Local Liaison Forum for Milton Road. And I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm Jocelyn Scutt, a City Councillor for Cambridge and formerly a County Councillor for Cambridgeshire. I represented West Chesterton initially, then Arbury on the county, and now I'm back to representing West Chesterton as a City Councillor. And I'd like to introduce the other members of the Local Liaison Forum who are present this evening. Not everybody is here, but of those who are present, I'll ask Mike Sargent, who's the Deputy Chair of the Local Liaison Forum, to introduce himself. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, Mike Sargent. I'm a City Councillor for West Chesterton.
Thanks, Mike. And then to Elisa Machini, who is the Deputy Leader of the County, the County Council of Cambridgeshire. Over to you, Elisa.
Indeed, Deputy Leader of the County, but more importantly, County Councillor for King's Hedges.
Good. Thank you. And then to our redoubtable Residents Association members. First to you, Michael Page.
Yes, I'm Michael Page, representative from Hurst Park Estate Residents Association.
And to Charles Nisbet. Charles.
Charles Nisbet, I'm the chair of Milton Road Residents Association.
Thank you. And we'll have the agenda up on the screen shortly, but before we do that, I'd like the project team to introduce themselves first. And perhaps I'll ask, where is he? Paul Vandenbolt, to introduce himself, because he's the project manager. And then Paul, you can hand over to others. But quickly before I do that, I see that Jamie DL has come on. Jamie, would you like to, we've just introduced ourselves, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I was struggling with the wrong links. My name is Jamie DL. I am the City Councillor for West Chesterton. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. And now back to Paul Vandenbolt. Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Hi, I'm Paul Vandenbolt, Project Manager for GCP, leading on Milton Road.
Thank you. And perhaps if you go round in order, the members, well, no, I'll call you, that's easier. Livio, perhaps if you'd introduce yourself, Livio Martelli. Now, it's interesting, you're on mute, funnily enough. No. Perhaps if you go out and come back in. Yeah, and we'll go on. I'll hand over to David. David Charlesworth, if you'd introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, I'm David Charlesworth. I'm GCP Communications Manager for the North and East projects, which includes Milton Road.
Thank you. And Thomas Porter.
Hi, I'm Tom Porter, Project Manager for GCP, just recently joined, looking to provide the extra support through construction phase on this project.
Thanks, Thomas. And Dan Wood. Dan.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dan Wood. I'm Senior Project Manager for Milestone. We'll be the contractors completing the work.
Great. And then to James Hostler. Jay.
Hi, I'm James Hostler, Assistant Project Manager for Great Cambridge Partnership, helping out on the Milton Road project.
Good. And I think that we've introduced everybody. So now maybe just have briefly up on the screen the agenda so that we can all see what's coming next. Thanks, Thomas. Right. So now we've got the agenda. We've started at 6 p.m. We're running through to 7:30 p.m. and I've done the, I need to do an update. In my update, I'd just like to say to everyone that we've had 2 meetings, one some considerable time ago and one much more recently, where we looked at it was not an official LLF meeting, it was a joint meeting in relation to a number of projects, including Waterbeach and others, and there was reference to the Milton Road project and to the Histon Road project. There are no official minutes from those meetings, but I will provide the links to the meetings if people would like to catch up with what occurred at those two meetings. We've done the project team introduction, and the third item on the agenda is construction and traffic management. That's how the project will proceed, and then we'll have a detailed design update, and then we'll have questions. And there is a reasonably large number of questions that have come in ahead of time. We'll run through those, and then if there's time, we'll also add in other questions that people have that have arisen during the course of the presentations. So over then to the construction and traffic management.
Jocelyn, is it okay if we just switch those two items so we start with number 4?
Absolutely, yes, for sure. Sorry. Yeah, so we'll address the detailed design update first, and then we'll have the construction and traffic management presentation. So if we could have the agenda off the screen, and we'll go then to the detailed design update and the presentation. And I would believe that Livio maybe.
No, I'm going to go through this, Jocelyn.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Paul. Thanks.
Okay, so Tom's just going to bring the presentation up. I'm going to try and keep this bit short because the main purpose of tonight really is to talk about the traffic management. So let's go to the next, Tom. Yeah, so in terms of where we are with Milton Road, the project's been on hold for quite a long time. I mean, we got to a position in the design where we had agreement from the board, the executive board, to take that to detailed design, which was undertaken. And since then, we have obviously been in construction on Histon Road, and Milton Road has had to wait its turn in terms of construction, which is why we're arriving at this stage now, having completed Histon Road. So in terms of where we're at, so we packaged up the detailed design in autumn of 2021, submitted for road safety audit, and this is the version of the design that has been made available online. We've also submitted that to Milestone, who are in the process of packaging up and preparing a contract for the works. Another large-scale activity that we've been undertaking is engaging with the utility companies to update their C4, it's labelled as their C4 diversion cost estimates, and that's quite a major piece of work on Milton Road because we've got quite a few underground diversions to account for, and we're also having a little bit of trouble working with the utility companies, who are a little bit under-resourced at the moment, largely I think due to the recent pandemic, and seems to be a lot of staff movements, or they've lost staff, haven't replaced them yet, so that remains a little bit of a risk on the project. The other thing we've done is we've undertaken value engineering meetings with Milestone, who have made suggestions on where we can tidy up the package and perhaps bring in some cost savings in terms of what we were originally intending. And I'll come on to one of those a bit later on, so just to give you an example. Next, Tom. So in terms of kind of design changes, there haven't really been many since the previous iteration of the design that went to the board. The two main design changes I just wanted to point out resulted from feedback from the LLF were the relocation of several bus stops. So we moved one bus stop pair closer to Downham's Lane, and we've also found a position for the inbound bus stop near Oak Tree Avenue. So if we go to the next slide, Tom, we can see I think first the Downham's Lane bus stop here. So we've got Downham's Lane just in the centre of, and you can see the two bus stops just to the, what is the south of Downham's Lane. And we agreed with the proposal that was made by one of the participants of the LLF that moving them to this location better served the residential population who lived kind of off Downham's Lane. If we go to the next slide. So the bus stop to the bottom of the picture, this is the bus stop that is currently located just to the south of Union Lane and currently blocks up that junction. So we've moved it considerably further south past Oak Tree Avenue.
Paul, could you indicate where the bus stop is with a pointer?
Tom, can you do that? It's the orange, big orange blob. That's the one. So the bus, where the mouse pointer is now, is the bus stop in question.
Thank you.
Okay, can we go to the next slide? So one other proposal that we are looking at, which came out of the initial draft comments that we've had from the road safety team, there were various reasons why they didn't support the design we had down at the Mitcham's Corner end of the scheme. So the road that is just entering Milton Road at the top of the drawing there is Westbrook. We initially proposed to take the cycle route off-road, so behind the verge, just as we entered Milton Road from Mitcham's Corner, and then back down onto the road past Westbrook Drive. The road safety auditors were concerned that where we brought, first they were concerned that we were creating too much complexity in terms of where, taking cyclists off the road in the proximity of driveways, etc. And then we were bringing them down too soon before the junction to give drivers who are entering or exit the junction a clear vision of the cyclist. So they have proposed that we extend that length of cycle lane across Westbrook Drive all the way back down to Mitcham's Corner, which we have agreed with in principle. It will be different to how it is now in terms of we'll look to achieve a 2 to 2.3 metre wide cycle lane, and we will also look to segregate it using a Cambridge curb. So we can talk about that a bit later. So if we move on. So in terms of other design activities, so I mentioned value engineering. One of the items that we picked up is the original proposals that we had. We were looking to separate the cycleway and footway with dropped curb, with a Marshall curb placed on its side, which was a solution just to create a kind of a slight height difference between the cycleway and the footway and to create like a differentiation. Since we did Histon Road, we we discovered a new product, a fairly new product, which we've utilised near to ATS, which is a cycleway demarcation curb. So what we're proposing to do is to replace all of the drop curb between footway and cycleway with these Marshall demarcation blocks, which require a much shallower footing. Therefore, they won't interfere so much with any utilities that are buried beneath, and they also provide slightly better demarcation between the footway and the cycleway. And that also has an impact on how we drain the cycleway and footway, and hopefully enables us to rationalise the drainage along most of Milton Road. The other thing that's come out of road safety is some minor modifications to signs and lines that we need to make up and down the scheme. And there's a few other issues that we need to still consider and decide how we're going to address. But they're fairly minor and they don't really correspond to the kind of overall detail of the scheme.
Paul, if I can just interrupt for a quick moment. A member of the public in the chat has asked us to clarify what, now I've just lost it, sorry. What is a Copenhagen crossing? That's one question. And clarifying what the term value engineering means to those who don't know. I'll just leave those on board. If you wanted to answer them now, that's fine, but it's just that they've been asked in the chat and it's probably a good idea to let you know now. Thanks.
Okay. Livio, can you get a picture of a Copenhagen crossing just so you can share it in a little while? Value engineering, that just relates to us sitting down and looking at ways that we can potentially reduce the cost through addressing problems in a slightly different way. So as I mentioned, the change to the marshal demarcation blocks is done on several bases. One, that we think it's a neater solution, and the second reason is because we think it will save a bit of money to the scheme. In terms of the Copenhagen crossings, we can show a picture of them at the end of the presentation when Livio's found one, but basically that relates to what we're looking to do at each side road that enters Milton Road, each residential side road, I should say. We are looking to provide a continuous footway and cycleway across that side road entrance, which is also ramped up compared to the carriageway, which provides visible priority to cyclists and pedestrians who are crossing the side road. Does that answer the question, Justin?
Yes, thank you. And may I just add another question? Is the Marshall demarcation block the same as that which has been used along Hills Road, or is it something different? Thanks, Paul.
No, it's the same as that we've used on Histon Road outside ATS Garage, if anyone's been there. But we can get a picture of it up as well.
Thank you.
Can we go to the next slide, Tom? So we'll come back to some images of those two aspects, but I just wanted to cover traffic regulation orders. So we've made the decision we've prepared all of the required traffic regulation orders for Milton Road, but we haven't yet consulted on them. So we need traffic regulation orders for all the new ramps and some of the new signs, etc., and crossings, that kind of thing. One thing that we haven't yet finalised, and we wanted to open up for discussion this evening, perhaps, is the subject of the traffic regulation order for the double yellow lines. In the current scheme, we proposed that Milton Road has double yellow lines along the length, as we've done on Histon Road. One of the issues with just having double yellows, as is evident on Histon Road, is that this allows loading to take place, which sometimes gets slightly abused. You get, as you know, on Milton Road, in some areas of Milton Road, kind of the parking and the waiting is virtually unenforceable due to the fact that traffic wardens have to wait a certain amount of time before they can either ask someone to move on or to book them, give them a ticket, you know, when they're parking in an obstructing kind of a bus lane or something. So another thing we've therefore looked at is imposing a location-based loading ban on Milton Road. So this would involve placing loading restrictions just in certain areas of Milton Road that have a current problem. And then the other option is that we have a loading ban along the entire length of Milton Road, which means that no one is allowed to stop on Milton Road. But we mark out certain areas where loading may take place out of peak hours. So we'll have certain loading bays where, that, you know, in probably the location of kind of the shops and stuff where loading is necessary at sometimes, where loading may take place. I think this is something that we can discuss lightly tonight, but I think we'll need to discuss a bit further before we implement anything. Can we move on to the next? I think I've covered the next slide. We'll just leave it up a second so people can. It's basically puts in writing what I just said.
Yeah, there are two more questions, Paul. Just to clarify, it's now disappeared. Just to clarify, at every side junction with Milton Road, all the cycle lanes will take priority over motor vehicles, just as they do on the cycle lanes on Green End Road. Is that correct? Somebody else, Martin Lucas Smith, has said, pedestrian and cycle priority at side roads will be a huge improvement. And the clarification about the every side road junction with Milton Road, that was a question raised by Robert Illingworth. And then there's a question from Isaac Lowe, what are peak hours?
Okay, so the question about what was the question about the priority? Will cyclists and pedestrians have priority?
Yeah, just to clarify, at every side junction with Milton Road,
yeah, that's the case. Yeah,
they will.
Yes,
have priority.
That's what the scheme has been designed to emphasise, that priority. Although that, to be fair, that priority has recently come about through changes in the highway code as well. But the reason that we've ended up with the Copenhagen style crossings is to visually promote that priority for pedestrians and cyclists. Yes. In terms of the question about peak time, James, can you answer that?
Yeah, no problem. Peak times aren't something that are standardised. They're designed and built in to suit whatever area a ban or restriction is put in place, so they can be tailored as needed for the area.
And this is, of course, raising concerns from residents as to how tradespeople would unload their tools and equipment if there were a ban on unloading along Milton Road in its entirety. And how would you say have a washing machine delivered? So that's a concern about that issue of banning loading along the whole of the road.
Can you answer that, James?
Yeah, sure. Loading bans restrict all vehicles from parking at any time unless they're emergency works or statutory undertakers, which are sort of waterworks and that sort of thing. So it would mean that anyone delivering or unloading would need to do so in a loading bay or one of the side streets. When you put a loading bay in, it's a trade-off between what the risk of people parking long-term and obstructing cycle lanes and bus lanes are, compared to how much loading activity is needed on the road. So it's something that does need to be looked into a little bit to see which one sort of wins. There isn't a duel, really.
And James, in terms of like trades vehicles, like, I don't know, if you're having an extension done and you need scaffolding or something, how, if there was a loading ban in place, how would that work?
They are still restricted and banned in that area. The only ones that aren't are scaffolders, would come under statutory works. Emergency plumbers for waterworks would come under statutory. General repairs, maintenance, home improvements wouldn't. They'd need to go into a loading area or a side street and walk them at the equipment in.
And is there a way to get a permit to park in such an area? Or is there a way to request a permit? So, for example, if you're doing some building works and you need large scale delivery to your premises, is there a way that you can apply for a permit to allow a temporary restriction on that loading ban?
If it was a large scale operation, you could look for, it's not a permit for the vehicle as such. What it would be is a temporary suspension of the restriction in that area.
Okay.
And as I understand it, this will be the subject of further consultation and discussion in any event. So perhaps if we could move on. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. It's something that I think this will be something that, I mean, the scheme at the moment has got double yellow lines because that's what, you know, that's kind of what's been traditionally done in these kind of areas. I think it's very much going to be a local discussion in terms of, do we go a little bit further than just double yellow lines? Do we look in specific areas at going further, or do we look along the whole length? I think that's what we're saying here. But in terms of the project team, we're fairly open-minded in terms of these options.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. So parking. So the scheme will remove all of the on-street, which is currently on pavement parking on Milton Road. A long time ago, before COVID, there were plans in place to look at residence parking across the city and across this area. This ground, well, apart from, I know Jocelyn took forward the Asham scheme in 2019, and that is up and running and in place. There were originally plans also to look at the Elizabeth area and Hurst Park area, and a resident parking scheme in kind of the wider area. So in terms of what needs to be done, we've agreed this text that residence parking schemes were proposed for the areas surrounding Milton Road. However, due to the whole of the residence parking scheme rollout in 2019, only the Asham scheme was installed, which has mitigated parking concerns of residents within the scheme boundary, inclusive to a number of properties on Milton Road. The GCP are looking to restart informal consultations on resident parking schemes, working with local members. We've already started having those discussions, who we believe will ensure residents' voices are key in shaping the scheme. The areas around Milton Road that are most impacted by the removal of formalised bays as part of the project are to be prioritised as part of the restart of residents' parking schemes in order to mitigate this loss. So, Jocelyn, I don't know if you want to say anything more on that at the moment, or
just really briefly, we're very much aware that there are problems with parking, particularly for some residents in some streets, but overall there does seem to be an issue, and therefore residents parking is within the grasp of residents. That is, it's up to residents whether a parking scheme goes ahead or doesn't. And what we will do after this local liaison forum meeting is over is circulate everybody in the area, in Asham, in Hurst Park Estate, and in the Elizabeth area, with a notice that we will have a public meeting on Zoom, and we'll invite officers who are expert in the issue of residents parking schemes, so that residents can ask all the questions they wish and gain answers about what can be done, what can't be done, what the consequences are, what the costs are, and so on. And because we're very well aware that no decisions can be made by residents until they really have a grasp on what the possibilities are and what needs to be done. And James Hostler, who's in this meeting at present, is, I understand, prepared to come to this meeting, and will have the officers who are, as I say, expert in terms of what the rules are for residents parking, to make sure that everyone who is a resident of this area knows, as I say, what the rules are and what can and can't be done. But it's within the residents' purview as to whether schemes go ahead or not. Thanks. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So next slide, please, Tom. All right, the main tasks to complete. So it feels like we've got a lot of stuff to complete before we start construction. So the first one, as I mentioned earlier, we've got to get to the end of all the discussion with utility companies. Milestone still working on finalising the construction package and submitting their budget estimate by early February to be tabled at the joint assembly, and then a more detailed target cost to be tabled at the joint assembly so that we can request the required budget. WSP need to finalise all design issues, addressing outstanding road safety audit issues and anything else that arises as a result of either tonight or discussion with other officers. Milestone, following tonight, will need to update their construction package and also all of the construction management plans. And also they need to finalise all their road space bookings, revise the target costs I mentioned. The other thing that we need to do is in the next few weeks, Milestone will be looking at doing some trial holes just to firm up where some of the utilities are. We've done a GPR survey. We've had returns in terms of where the utilities think their own utilities are, but sometimes it's useful to actually have some proper trial holes done so that we can verify that information. So Dan may touch on that when he comes to his presentation. And then we're obviously looking to commence construction sometime this spring, as soon as we can. Next slide. I think that's the end from me.
Good. Now I see that Councillor Anna Bradnam has her hand up, but before we go to Councillor Anna Bradnam, Councillor Anna Bradnam's joined us from the County Council. Councillor Jenny Gawthorpe-Wood has joined us from the City Council, and Councillor Hilary Cox-Condren's joined us from the County Council. So Councillor Bradnam, would you like to introduce yourself very briefly to the meeting, and then we'll go to Councillor Gawthorpe-Wood and then to Councillor Condren, just to introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn. Yes, so I'm Councillor Anna Bradnam, and I'm County Councillor for the Waterbeach Division, which leads off, obviously, Milton Road, and it's through which we get to the city. So I represent Milton, Land Beach and Waterbeach, Horningsea, Fen Ditton, but we're concerned about our use of the road, and in much the way that you are, that we are kind of users of the road rather than residents around it. So I'm interested from that point of view. Shall I wait to ask my question until the others have introduced themselves?
That would be great. Yes, thanks, Anna. I'll pass over to Councillor Gawthorpe-Wood.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gawthorpe-Wood. I represent on the City Council. I'm one of the councillors for King's Hedges. Some of my residents, or one side of King's Hedges, abuts the more northerly end of Milton Road towards the outskirts of the city, and of course many of my residents are Milton Road users. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Gawthorpe-Wood. And now to Councillor Cox-Condren.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, yes, I'm Councillor Hilary Cox-Condren. I'm County Councillor for Arbury. So in particular, thinking about the impact that traffic diversions, for instance, will have on residents' lives and throughout this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cox-Condren. And back to you, Councillor Bradnam, for your question. And when you've asked your question and had a response, we'll then go to the next part of the presentation, which is about the construction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to ask, I noticed on your previous slide, as you say, Paul, there's quite a lot of things that need to be done before construction can start. And the least of those, or not the least of those, is traffic regulation orders. Now they take 12 weeks to come through. And I'm just wondering, are you anticipating a slippage in the start time? Because we're already into February and 12 weeks takes us March, April, May, which isn't really spring anymore. I just wondered if you're thinking it's more like to be starting in the summer.
Sorry, so you're talking about the actual traffic regulation orders. We're not going to, we have no rush to get them underway before we start construction.
Yeah, but they take 12 weeks to come through.
Yeah, but we'll be doing the actual traffic regulation, or the permanent ones. We'll be doing them as while we're in construction. We'll be advertising.
Sorry. No, what I mean is, sorry, perhaps I'm using the wrong phrase. But I mean the permission to have access to the road.
All right, sorry, the temporary traffic. Dan, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. Temporary licensing, so it's a Dan issue, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so the temporary traffic regulation order has already been submitted.
Ah, okay.
And it's being considered for a spring start.
Fine.
Great, thank you. So thanks so much, Paul van der Valk, and Paul in particular is wonderful for coming this evening because he's had a bout of COVID-19 and we were all crossing fingers that he'd be okay, and he does appear to be. So thanks, Paul. And now I'll hand over. We'll move on to the construction.
Jocelyn, we were going to see the pictures of the Copenhagen Crossing before we went on to that. Are they available?
If they're available now, we'll look at them now. If they're not, we can look at them after we've done the construction plan. Perhaps if we move on to the construction plan and then we can come back to the Copenhagen Crossing and then the Marshalls item.
So as we go into construction, first of all, we just wanted to quickly say something about communications, and I think David's going to cover that in the next slide.
Yeah,
excellent.
Just because we've got so many people here who've, I can see we've got over 100 people here. I thought it just would be a good opportunity to talk about how we're going to talk to the community and how the community can talk to us while construction is underway. Things. So there are a number of ways that you'll be able to keep up to date with this project. We have a dedicated web page on our website, which is at the top of the screen at the moment. We'd also be doing a monthly email out on the project once the project starts, and you'll be able to subscribe to that monthly update once it has started. And we're very happy for groups to then forward on that monthly update. And also I know that, for example, on the Histon Road project, a number of that will then posted on various Facebook groups, etc. If you have an inquiry or anything, a question about the project, then you can always email it at our contact us email address. That's staffed every day, and we have a process of dealing with inquiries. On Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, we will also post up stories and news items about the project as it's going along. We'll be using we are at Greater Cams on all three platforms, and we'll be using the hashtag GCP Milton Road when we actually talk about the project on Twitter. We'll also be regularly briefing the local media such as Cambridge Evening News, Cambridge BBC Radio, Cambridgeshire, etc. for those people that don't have access to online stuff and for more traditional methods. We'll also will be doing letter drops and door-to-door knocking of individual properties ahead of key points of work that affect those properties. And Milestone, and Dan will cover this again in his presentation, is Milestone also have an out-of-hours number that you'll be able to phone if you've got concerns when the project's underway, and there'll be a dedicated email address for Milestone for this project. So I just wanted to cover off, Jocelyn, those sort of communication channels while we've got everyone here. Thank you very much. I'm happy to hand over to Dan and his presentation.
Right. Thanks so much, David. Thank you. Good. And so now it's to construction.
Hi, good evening, guys. Yeah, thanks a lot for this. The plan of the presentation is to take you through some of the thinking and behind the phasing and the delivery of the project. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. To start with, I'd like to just give a very brief introduction about Milestone. So yeah, I work for Milestone Infrastructure. We're a part of the M Group Services business group, and we're their highways business. We're currently working in partnership with the County Council and the GCP to deliver all of the term service maintenance work throughout the County of Cambridgeshire and some of the larger infrastructure projects. I was part of the team last year which delivered the works on Histon Road for the GCP, very similar to this work now on Milton Road. And also prior to that, we delivered the extension to the Trumpton Park and Ride site. Next slide, please. In terms of work scope, I think many people on the call will be sort of familiar with what we're trying to achieve. there's lots of elements to this. It's quite logistically, it's a very challenging project. So there's a brief summary there of what we're going to be doing in terms of clearing the site, upgrading the existing highway drainage. As part of the works, we're going to divert a series of utilities and provide new installations to the network. We're going to construct new footways, cycleways, bus lane, and resurface the carriageway. A large part of the works is this extensive landscaping package to create this tree-lined avenue, which you can see in the projected image there on the right-hand side. We're also doing lots of upgrades to junctions, safety upgrades, and improvement to the traffic signals. We've got a couple of bits of information on there about the working hours. So the working hours, in terms of our daytime working window, it's 7 till 7. But just to really clarify that, our typical working day will be sort of 7 till 5:30. And there are some restrictions within that about noise. So whilst the guys will be arriving on site for 7, you know, and getting ready for work, that time period early morning is part of the pre-start briefings and all of the safety sign-ons we do before we start work. Noisy operations, the breaking out of existing footways, for example, won't start before 8 o'clock in the morning. Again, there I've put a note about nighttime hours. So typically our nighttime working hours are 7 at night till 6 in the morning, but we do have restrictions on that because we're well aware it's a residential area. We don't want to be disturbing everyone. So, for example, when we're completing the resurfacing works at night, we'll restrict the planing operation. So that's the operation where a machine mills out the existing road surface, which is quite loud, to finish before midnight. That's basically in line with the work we do all over the county. And the reason midnight's selected, it's still, I appreciate it's still quite late in terms of, for noisy operation to be going on, but it's selected to provide the most efficient working window to complete the work. So rather than, finishing at 9 o'clock every night and then the road closures being on the road for, double the amount of time and the obstruction that causes. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we're going to deliver the project, I wanted just to chat through what the traffic management situation is going to look like. Particularly, as many of you are probably aware of the works on Histon Road and the works that went on there. So the good news is with Milton Road, it's a wider travel corridor. So unlike Histon Road, where we had to block the inbound traffic route for the entire duration of works, we're looking to maintain two-way traffic flows on Milton Road for the duration of the project. With a slight caveat is that there is the odd area where there's insufficient width, or there's also areas where we need to do works within the carriageway. So where we're doing that, we're still going to maintain two-way directional traffic, but we're going to control that with temporary traffic lights, which will then restrict Milton Road running down to a single lane direction at one time. Also, throughout the duration of the works, we're proposing with the TTROs that we've submitted to reduce the speed limit to 20 miles per hour. And so what we can see, not particularly clear on the right-hand side, but this is our traffic management solution, which is based on the installation of narrow lanes. So the early works, what that will require is closing Milton Road in full, and we'll chat through the impact of that and the diversions and whatnot in a moment, but we'll shut Milton Road in full and we're going to install these narrow lanes. So that will involve removing some of the existing islands in the centre of the road, removing the existing white lining and re-white lining the road with the new road widths. And base that image on the bottom left-hand side of the slide gives an indication of what that will look like. So the dashed line there is the probable line of cones, and then the hatched area would be the working area. So we'll be working within the closed lane. So yeah, it does mean that we'll be removing the bus lane for the period of the construction works. That in essence will then transfer over. So once we've built the east side first, sections of road will then be transferred over to the west side. So we can build that side. Next slide, please. So diversion routes. I want to be particularly clear on the thinking behind this. So the official signed diversion route for nighttime closures, and this is only for nighttime closures, is going to be via Chesterton Road, Histon Road and the A14. I want to apologise, the pack I originally sent out actually showed on the map it going down Victoria Road, which isn't the case. So this is basically the same diversion route that was used on the Histon Road project during full road closures, obviously back to the front now that we're closing Milton Road. In periods of road closures, we will not be signing diversion routes via any of the local roads, King's Hedges, Arbury Road, Green End. There will be no signage to send traffic down those roads. What we'll be doing though is some roads will, and we'll chat about this a little bit more in a moment, but some roads, some cul-de-sacs, we need to maintain access to them, obviously. So what will happen is prior to any road closures, there'll be communications from the team letting homeowners know exactly how they can access their property. Road closures will be controlled by gate people, by lookouts. And basically, if you live on a cul-de-sac or if you live on a house on Milton Road, you'll get to the road closure point, you'll make contact with the gate person. They will then escort you through to your property with an escort vehicle or direction. And that's how we control access to people who don't have any route to their property. The local routes on there shown with the red arrows. So as I said, they're not the signed diversion routes. The purpose is we're going to close Milton Road beyond the point that would basically stop people reassigning via these local routes and increase in traffic, HGVs down pedestrian routes. But one thing we can do to minimise the impact on road users is as we work past junctions. So for example, in this first set of closures where we're installing the narrow lanes, we do have the opportunity to shut Milton Road up north of the busway to stop the inbound traffic. But once the narrow lanes, for example, have been installed past the King's Hedges junction, we could open that junction up to allow local traffic residents on King's Hedges and Green End Road to travel straight over the junction to carry on their way rather than being diverted around the lengthy diversion route. Milton Road there would be a blockade either side of the junction to stop people coming down into the work area. And there's just a note there. So the sensitive roads there, Milton Road, King's Hedges, Green End Road, Arbury Road, and Gilbert Road will only be closed at night times. There's no plan to close those in the day. Next slide, please. So in terms of construction phasing, I appreciate it's a little bit of a complicated schematic there on the right. So I just want to take a bit of time to chat that through really. One of the things we're trying to do is minimize the overall time we're going to be on the road. It's very obvious that these works are going to have some impact on people that live there and businesses along the route and road users. So really we're trying to balance by making sure we can work efficiently with as many gangs as possible to reduce the overall construction period. So what the colours indicate on that plan is the different gangs which will be working. You see there's about 6 gangs, and actually each gang will consist of multiple working gangs, but it is 6 gangs as a total number there. So the areas marked number 1 are the areas we'll first start in, and then they'll move into area 2 once the original works are done, and then they'll move into area 3. And what you'll notice there, particularly if you look just at the bottom, the orange gang, so that gang there will finish the first 300 metres in area A on the eastern side first. Then there'll be a night closure, which will adjust the narrow lanes, and that traffic management will be switched so that that gang can then move over to the opposite side of the road to build the west side, and then it will move up. So this program's done in such a way that it still allows safe pedestrian and cycling movements. And that's why we're not just having mobilised gangs along the entire length, basically blockading everything and make it very difficult to walk or cycle in the area. So yeah, we're going to construct the east side of Milton Road first, and then gangs will piece by piece be moving over to the west side. Nighttime full road closures will be required when we're transitioning over for the narrow lanes, and that's all about safety and access and working room requirements. There's one caveat to this phasing at the moment, as Paul touched on. We're still at a reasonably early phase, and we're still trying to understand the impact of lots of different issues, one being utility diversions. So if there are some significant diversions, which will take some time, that may impact this phasing proposal and also the traffic management solution for that particular area. But that's something that's going to be addressed on a case-by-case basis, and we're going to be coming up with a solution which makes that as efficient and at least impactful, so to stick into this plan as possible. Next slide, please. So yeah, I wanted to chat through some of the local TM solutions at side roads, because I know this impacts a lot of people. So this particular solution now is based on side roads or cul-de-sacs on Milton Road, which have no use of alternative roads to get to your properties. So where that's the case, what we're going to have to do is install temporary traffic lights. So the schematic on the left shows what that would look like 2 light heads out on Milton Road. But what we'll be doing is linking up those traffic signals. So both of those will go green at the same time, which means it's not like on Milton Road, you're going to be waiting to travel forward while you have traffic coming towards you. They will only go red together when there's traffic coming out of the side road. What that will enable us to do is restrict the side road down to a single traffic lane, which will give us, a safe working zone then to build half of the junction. That traffic management will then switch to the other side of that junction so we can build the remaining half. And that's how we're going to maintain access through the construction period for all side roads, which don't, all cul-de-sacs on Milton Road. And there's a list of them there. Next slide, please. One of the things we've looked at is side roads which have very short diversions on local roads, and they've been flagged up here. And the reason for that is because the temporary traffic lights will have an impact to traffic flows on Milton Road, so it will lead to some form of congestion. So trying to balance that out, where there's a sensible and short diversion possible, which people are already able to take, we're highlighting that, and the proposal is to fully close these particular roads on the right-hand side there. And that will be for the period it takes to build this crossing and the new footways which tie into the sort of extent of the works. That can be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. The majority of the smaller side roads will be at the lower end of that duration. Some of the larger side roads will be at the higher end. In terms of where it is, unfortunately, some people's images are over the text there, so you have to excuse me if I don't remember all of the diversions, but Ashland Road proposes to divert by Gurney Way and Gilbert Road. Hurst Park Avenue would be a diversion via Leys Avenue. Highworth Avenue. And so one of the things we're proposing on Highworth is to remove the existing planters on the roundabout, which will then open up traffic at the top. But that will only be done whilst we're closing Highworth Avenue on the Elizabeth Way roundabout. So it will remove that through route that the planters were put in place to avoid in the first place. And that's very much a temporary solution. So once that work's complete on the roundabout and the tie-in, we'll then put those planters back, put that blockade back. So it'll go back to how it is now, but obviously with new planters and new plants. The reason for that is if we leave the traffic as we are now, it would require the installation of four-way traffic signals, temporary signals around Elizabeth Way roundabout. And unfortunately, when we do that, it won't be possible because there won't be the visibility of a normal junction. It's not going to be possible to link up green times on the signals, which means it would restrict Milton Road down to like single ways of traffic, which would have a huge impact in terms of congestion. So that seems to me a reasonable mitigation to try and avoid that. Some of the other ones there, so Union Lane. The proposal is, so Arbury Road we know is a very sensitive junction to traffic and to cyclists that use it regularly. So the proposal is when we're working on Arbury Road junction, we close Union Lane. What that will do there is that will allow us to re-signalise to pair up the signals on Milton Road and maintain a really safe route that's going to be able to flow as lean as possible when you're using traffic signals to really try and minimise the congestion on that road. I know there's some questions and some feedback about Arbury Road and the safety for cyclists. So I just want to reaffirm that on all of this work, when we're installing narrow lanes, it considers the traffic movements at each of the junctions. And where necessary, we'll widen out the narrow lanes to make sure there's safe movement for larger vehicles and cyclists. We'll adjust stop line positions to suit that same thing. So the temporary traffic management solution will be safe for the road users, cyclists in the area. For Woodhead Drive, so unfortunately, every bit of land on Milton Road available has been developed. So there's nowhere to put a compound, which we need some form of compound to be able to have our offices store materials, store all the traffic management and have our welfare facilities. So it will maintain access to the property there right on the corner. Or out of Woodhead Drive for the whole duration. So vehicles will instead divert via Downhams Lane. Kendall Way there will be a diversion via Green End Road. Ramsden Square will be via King's Hedges and Lovell Road will be via King's Hedges. Next slide, please. So again, something that's very important to all of us is maintaining safe routes for pedestrians and cyclists. We know building this work, we need to fully excavate, the existing footway and the cycleway and work into the carriageway. So it's not going to be possible to keep that footway open while we're trying to excavate it down 300 mil and further where we're installing ducting and drainage. So the way in which we're going to provide safe pedestrian routes throughout the area is by installing temporary crossing points either side of work areas. So if you're an inbound pedestrian walking down this eastern footpath, what you'll do is you'll get to that blue hatched area and there's going to be a blockade of footway in front of you. There'll be some temporary traffic lights and pedestrian lights, so you'll push your button, safe crossing of the road, and then you'll carry on walking down the west side. And there you'll have the opportunity to cross back onto your side if you want to, past the work area via the other pedestrian crossing point. Or of course you can carry on the western side there. It does raise a challenge though. So again, in terms of balancing efficiency with not taking forever on the road and minimizing that overall pain of or impact of the job, it does mean residents that live within a work area have a choice about how they're going to get across the road for walking in from their house. So there's two options there. One is that people come out of the house and will walk across the road in a space between traffic, which is the idea of the 20 mile an hour traffic speed limit. The other option is, so out of hours, it's going to be a lot easier for us. There'll be a fenced corridor within the closed lane of traffic to provide a walkway during nights when we're not working. That will be maintained wherever possible in the day, but obviously we need some room to park our plant and machinery and materials. So where that's necessary, that will remove that walkway, but each gang will have a lookout, and the lookout basically will be keeping an eye out all day. So if someone comes out of their house, wants to walk down into town from their, within a work area, as they approach a gang, the gang will stop. The lookout will instruct the machine to stop. They'll move out the way and they'll allow a safe passage through past the works. Similarly on cycling routes, so the proposal is that where the combined cycle route is at the moment on the western side, the inbound side, which allows the two-way cycle traffic, that's to remain open and in use. I appreciate there's some concerns about the number of cyclists which use the route and whether they would all fit safely on that cycle route. So the alternative option is to drive within the lane of traffic, and again, that's part of this reduction in speed to 20 mile an hour. What we'll also be doing is ensuring we have plenty of signage out within the traffic management, which is going to be very clear warnings to road users about the hazard of or the cyclists using the route, and making sure there's no dangerous overtaking. Linked to that and linked to the 20 mile an hour route, something we did on Histon Road is we had speed cameras come onto site, and that we got a lot of data from that, and that had a significant impact in terms of reducing these people who were speeding through the works regardless of the speed limit. Next slide, please. So of course we need to do all of this work right across your driveways for the people that live on Milton Road, and that's no easy task. So there's various construction depths what we're going to. For standard footway construction, we're over 300 millimeters deep. In some areas where we're doing drainage, we could be excavating as just over a metre down to about 1.2 metres right across people's driveways. So unfortunately, it will restrict access at times. We're quite well versed in terms of, we've just done this for the last couple of years at Histon Road, and we've built up a really good system, and it involves a lot of communication. So we'll chat about that in a moment in terms of those different methods. But what will happen before we do any work past your property, there will be advance notice and there will be conversation to understand any restrictions you have. And then we'll do whatever we can to basically work that together. There's been all sorts. So on Histon Road, some people are able to park in their neighbour's driveway for a short period whilst the work's done. Some people will park within the closed lane of traffic. Some people will reassign down a side road or an alternative route. But we'll take all of that on board and we'll find what works for you. And if you've got any particular requirements, like some people have regular carer visits on Histon Road, we'll make sure that's built into the plan and that you can continue to get that service whilst these roadworks are ongoing. And there's just a note there. So it's not always going to be possible to fully excavate and backfill a trench in a day. There's lots of work what we're doing at depth. So what will happen there is there's two options. One is that we'll be constructing temporary ramps out of stone material, which means there won't be any steps between driveways and the work. So it mitigates the risk of damaging any vehicles when you're coming in and out. And the alternative option is to install steel road plates. So again, that's just to make sure you have continued safe access while the works is going on. Next slide, please. I just want to spend a quick moment talking about site clearance work. So in some areas, we're building new footway right back to the highway boundary, and some bushes and hedges from private properties have over the years grown over the existing highway boundary. So it is going to be necessary to cut those back, and in some instances it may be necessary to fully remove them. Where this impacts any property owners, the GCP are going to be in communication with them in advance of any vegetation clearance. So don't worry, contact will be made directly by the GCP. In terms of when we're doing this, so what we don't want to do, this is quite a lengthy project, a couple of year project. We don't want to come in and just completely remove all greenery and vegetation along the entire site. So what we'll do is we're going to clear the vegetation on the eastern side first, which is the first phase of works, effectively the first year. And then the vegetation on the opposite side of the road will be cleared on a phase by phase basis as we transition over to the opposite side of the road. Also worth noting, that some of this clearance will be done throughout the year, which may be in nesting bird periods. So rest assured, we have an environmental team and an ecologist that work with us. So before we do any vegetation clearance, that will all be inspected by a qualified ecologist who will identify any nesting birds. Should a nesting bird be found, that area will be sectioned off and it will not be removed until the birds have hatched and fledged. So we'll be operating within the rules, the law. And yeah, otherwise we'll do the full inspections, and only once we've got the green light from the ecologist will the vegetation be removed. Next slide, please. So the resurfacing works are a large part of our project. We're going to be resurfacing the entire length of Milton Road, so it's no small task. We had lots of questions and lots of feedback from Histon Road about this work. Why does it need to be completed at night? It's been a frequent question asked. So I just wanted to spend a little moment talking about what's actually involved in resurfacing. So the very first task is what we spoke about earlier, the road planing. So these are quite large machines, about 2.5 meters wide, big steel drums and teeth, which will come through and they'll mill the existing road surface to remove it. And they have a large conveyor belt on the front, which will shoot the planings, what you generate, into a lorry for disposal. There's quite a lot of work going on around that at the time. So we need safe access for lorries to be driving down, reversing, turning, and feeding these large bits of plant. So that particular task is very important. We have the space, and it's not something that can be done easily or efficiently just within a single lane. And similarly, then we've got the actual resurfacing work. So that involves lorries filled with asphalt coming down to site, reversing onto a very large paver, and a paver can lay up to over 4 meters wide width of carriageway in one hit. So that'll be tipping 20 tons of asphalt into the front bucket of the paver, and then there'll be continuous rolling behind it. One of the things we do is we try to avoid joints in asphalt because it creates a sort of degradation of the pavement by having a cold joint between layers. And that's why when we bring it through, we bring through both lanes. We've jumped on a couple of slides there. Tom, if we can go back, please. Perfect. So yeah, that's the idea, and a little bit of explanation on why we need full road closures to be able to safely complete this work. Also, in terms of protecting yourselves, members of the public, there's an awful lot of vehicle movements, heavy plant movements, reversing up and down on night. So it's very important we just restrict access to the site so that we can ensure it's completed safely. We spoke a little bit about the noise earlier on, but that's there on the right-hand side again. So noisy operations, the removal of road surfacing will be complete by midnight each shift. Surfacing works and the lining works, so the laying of the white and yellow lines, will carry on then, and that can continue until the road closure finishes at 6 o'clock in the morning, although very often it's done much before then on a shift. Next slide, please. So yeah, David touched a little bit on it in the morning, but one of the key things for me is how you guys can get directly in touch with us. You're definitely going to have concerns throughout the works, and you're going to have questions, and we want to be able to address them very quickly. So as David mentioned, we're going to have a designated project email address that will be monitored by Naomi, who's shown on the screen there, but also myself and the rest of the site management team. So that will give you an immediate email address, which one of us will pick up. In addition to that, we're going to have a 24/7 monitored call center. So that's a call centre based, it covers all of our operations. It's based out of Birmingham. But what they'll have is if there's anything urgent to report, they have access to the out of hours emergency crew. So you can call them any time of day or night, and they'll be able to either get onto the site team, or they'll be able to get onto our emergency crew that works on the term service contract. We spoke a little bit about it earlier on for road closures. So one thing we do is we install the advanced warning signs out on the road. So when you're driving down Milton Road, you're going to see some really large yellow and black signs with some text on which will say this road will be closed here from this date to this date. And that will be on side roads as well. So that's one method of notifying people that this road will be closed and the times it will. And they go out 2 weeks in advance of road closures. In addition to that, though, what we'll do for any properties which front Milton Road or on a cul-de-sac that don't have alternative access, we'll be doing a physical letter drop. So that will notify owners of any closures that will impact their routes to site, and it will also spell out phasing of works and if there's any change in terms of what gate you should go to access your property during these night shifts. It will be explained on that letter drop. In addition to that, we'll provide monthly newsletter updates. So that's going to record progress achieved in the period and also a bit of a look ahead. It will share lessons learned. It will cover a wide array of things and photos of what we've been doing. To sign up to that, please log on to the GCP website and register for the mailing list. So yeah, Naomi, we'll see quite a lot of her. Naomi, she works every day, 5 hours a day. Her job predominantly is up and down our sites. Our face is well known. She'll be popping into all the businesses, the shops, making sure all of you guys are fully aware of exactly what we're doing and when we're doing it, and also being a bit of a route there to raise any queries you've got directly to us and to get them addressed. So you'll see quite a lot of Naomi. And then finally, really, COVID permitting is the note. Hopefully, we're on the things are getting better COVID front. But yeah, one thing we'll do is we'll have drop-in sessions. So these will be publicly advertised. And what there'll be various welfare units along the site. They'll be on different days and different times. And that will allow anybody, members of the public, to come in and speak to one of the site management team. And that can be for anything. If you want to catch up on terms of progress of works, any concerns you have, any complaints you have, that's an opportunity for you guys to come in and talk to us face to face, rather than which some people prefer to having phone calls and emails. The next slide, please. So yeah, I did mention, I hope I've been clear enough. This is at this stage it's very much a work in progress. Hopefully you can see we've been putting in an awful lot of effort to come up with the best plan possible based on where we are at the stage of this contract. But there are still quite a few risks which may impact what I've spoken about tonight from a phasing perspective, a duration for the overall programme and also the traffic management solution. So the image I've put there on the right hand side, that's actually some footpath we've opened up on Histon Road, just not far away from Ashton Road, I believe. Sorry, Aikman Street. You can see there the amount of utilities in such a small area. And they, to be honest, they're the main risk to my gangs working on site from a health and safety perspective. And then the wider impact to yourselves, and services are damaged and it impacts people's internet or other utility supplies. So yeah, one of the things we're looking at is utility diversions required as a result of the works. And in addition to that, we're looking at network resilience with all of the utility suppliers down Milton Road. And that's to avoid us getting to a point where we've completed Milton Road, it looks fantastic, and then one of the utility companies come through with a big trench and a load more impact for the road users and wider public. Other things to mention there are lessons we've learned on Histon Road. So at Histon Road, we found a concrete tank road, which we believe is from World War II. That was basically a reinforced concrete slab, quite a large one, and that caused us quite a few delays, particularly when we was working down at Huntingdon Road and Victoria Road Junction. And it is believed that continued on to Milton Road, although we don't know the exact location of it. So there is some risk there. Linked to that is Unexploded Ordinance. So some people might remember it because it made the Cambridge News. We actually uncovered what was an anti-tank round on Histon Road as part of the works. That was inspected by the police, who then instructed us to close a road while the bomb squad came out and disposed of it. Thankfully, it was low risk. So when it happened again a couple of weeks later, we didn't need to close the road. But with the presence or potential presence of this tank road, that would remain a risk for the works on Milton Road. And then finally, I spoke about it earlier on, but nesting birds is a risk. And it's something, obviously, if there's a nesting bird, they're going to be protected and works will be impacted for that area until the birds have hatched and fledged. Next slide, please. Yeah, brilliant. So thank you for that. I hope I've covered everything in a bit of detail and give you a bit of a flavour for what we're trying to achieve to build this road, and also been able to explain the thought behind some of our decisions. It's very much with this type of work a balancing act of trying to be able to deliver the work efficiently while not impacting everybody through regular closures and impacting their way of lives. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much, Dan Wood. And may I just say first, you need to talk to John Latham, because John Latham has sent in a question that goes directly to your issue about that concrete slab. He knows where the concrete slab is. It's somewhere near the Milton Arms. So I think that we need to put John Latham in contact with you specifically in relation to that issue. So I'll actually say thanks so much, John, for your question. And you really will be helpful. As Dan Wood has said, it caused a real problem in Histon Road. Now, I think, what I was going to do was put the question about the impact on the shops and the traders, because it's been coming up in the chat and in the questions as a primary issue. And if we do that first and then go to the questions that have been pre-submitted, and then we'll come back to other questions that people might have. But the issue about the traders is really vital. Dan, thank you.
No problem. So from a construction point of view, when we're working on the eastern side of the road, the existing parking area out the front of the shops will be left as it currently is. There won't be an impact. The impact will obviously be when we're trying to construct that side of the road. So the assurance I can provide is that there'll be regular communication with all of those business owners to talk about the phasing. And I can also assure you that we're not going to completely close every parking area in front of every shop and area at the same time. So that section of works we're planning on doing in phases. So there'll be a closed section of parking outside maybe one business, and hopefully they can reuse some of the other parking areas in front of the shops next door. That work will be complete, and then we'll move down so that that area that's complete can then be parked upon. So yeah, that's a way of maintaining it. I know from chatting to some of the guys that there's some big issues when City Fibre, I think it was, came through there. Just with plonking materials in parking spaces, that 100% won't be our way of working. Hopefully you'll find that we communicate a lot more readily and upfront and make sure access is maintained throughout.
Good. And I think that what would be helpful is if there could be some sort of a timetable that people knew what time, which part of the road is likely to be dealt with. I know that it may not be possible to pin it down to actual, this day to that day, but I think a program that does show time spans would be actually very useful. Now, I think it's possibly not possible to go to the people who've asked the questions in person. So what I'll do, and I hope people are happy with this, is just go really quickly to the written questions, and if I'll ask them, and if we could have a response. And we know that we have to put up on the screen the Copenhagen crossing and the Marshall demarcation block, but we'll do that at the end. There's a question from Rosalind Lund. It's come to our attention that Arbury Road is being listed as the diversionary route for the Milton Road construction works. This is alarming, and there are particular anxieties relating to traffic congestion around Milton Road Junction with Arbury Road, as it's the narrowest part of the road. Please, could we have your support in ensuring Arbury Road is not treated as a diversionary route? And then the issue about the modal filter is raised, but that, of course, is not a question for the Milton Road project. So can assurances be given about how the Arbury Road Junction will be addressed and the problems during the construction phase, please?
Yeah, sure. I hope I've been clear in my presentation just a moment ago. The Arbury Road will not be used as a diversion route for at any time on the Milton Road project. Arbury Road will be closed on night closures. So people which are travelling in from and using Arbury Road will hit a closure, and then they will need to travel back out via Arbury Road. But there will be no sign diversion or no reassignment of any traffic down Arbury Road throughout the scheme.
Thank you. And then there's a question from Andrew Milbourne, and this is really the issue about phasing in the construction plan. It's quite difficult to make sense of the diagram, and Andrew understands that they're splitting it longitudinally. There are gangs within sections, but it's not really clear what is happening then. So it would be good to have a clearer map for each phase of the development, showing areas that will be worked on and which will be usable road. So although the map makes sense to the people who are actually doing the work, it needs to be described or produced in a way that the residents can understand. So it's really this question of producing a colour-coded map that does show what will be happening when. So we're trusting that that can be done and that it'll be up on the website.
Yeah, Jocelyn, I can answer that one. Yes, we realise that these are technical drawings and technical maps that we've put out, and we realise as part of the communication that we need more user-friendly maps. Myself and my comms team is something that we will take in hand and are taking forward.
Terrific. Thanks so much, David. And if it could go up on the
another quick comment on that. Yeah, at this stage, Dan had the areas numbered 1 to 3 to give basically an order of construction. So as the program develops, we will be able to put dates rather than numbers, if you know what I mean. So that map will therefore develop and we'll be able to present it.
Great, thank you. Now we've got a number of questions from Matthew Danish. 1, according to the construction plan slides, there will be cycle routes only on the northwest side of Milton Road during the first half of construction. This effectively means squeezing everyone into an overcrowded shared use pavement and no off-road cycling provision at all between Arbury Road and Highworth Avenue. And there's a note that there are numerous cyclists using Milton Road at peak times. How will this be addressed? A number of other residents have asked this same question in the chat. What provision is being made during the construction phase for pedestrians and for cyclists? There seems to be attention being paid to motorists, but what about cyclists and pedestrians? Thank you.
Sure. So the slide I displayed about the cycling and pedestrian management throughout the works is a valid concern, which I completely appreciate. So yeah, it will be a case of using that shared use path inbound, and then it will be a case of being within the traffic lane within it, which is all part of the reason of slowing the traffic down to 20 miles per hour and ensuring compliance through the speed camera vans. When we were looking at the scheme and the planning of the scheme, there's just simply not the width there to be able to construct the works and have a designated inbound segregated cycle lane throughout the construction period. The only way to do that is to do a traffic management solution like Histon Road and put on an inbound closure to all traffic, which the impact that would have had for over the length of Milton was felt to be too severe. Once we've constructed the east side, we've built this segregated new cycle lane, and that will then become the inbound, the designated cycle route for cyclists coming in and out while we're building the west side of the road. So
Chair, can I just ask for clarification on that, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Councillor Beaton.
Thank you. So as I understand it, what you've said is during the construction, you are going to maintain a route through for both cyclists and pedestrians. It might be in a very narrow width, and it might be on the actual carriageway, but in a barriered off section of it, but you are going to maintain a route through. Is that
yes, our route will be maintained. The only, if I clarify on that, the cycling route would be within the open lane of traffic, where there isn't a designated cycle lane on the existing open footway and cycle lane.
Okay.
If you're coming in, there's existing cycle lane in the north, but when you meet Arbury Road, it transitions into the carriageway. So at that point, cyclists coming inbound to the city would travel within the lane of traffic.
And there'll always be somewhere for pedestrians to walk.
Yeah, so out of hours, there'll be a fence route within the work areas, so they can safely get past our works and then to the open footways either side. Alternatively, there'll be crossing points either side of work areas. So as you come down the road and hit the work area, the footway will be closed and there will be a push button control to get to the opposite side of the carriageway and then continue your foot journey in.
Good. Now, people are being concerned because we do only have 10 minutes until 7:30, but perhaps if we quickly go through these other questions, and then if there is some time for an extension at the end, we may be able to manage more.
Listen, we're happy to go on.
Oh, terrific. Thanks so much, Paul. Thank you. Now, this is another one on this same issue about cycling. From Matthew Danish, once the road's been narrowed, one can anticipate that junctions, especially the Arbury Road junction, will become extremely congested, and there are concerns about tailbacks leading to buses being stuck and safety hazards for cyclists caught in the middle of it. In the chat, there is a suggestion that perhaps police might be brought in to do some traffic direction in this regard. That's not in Matthew Danish's question, it's in the chat. But the issue here is that there's a question as to forming a team to be a working group from the LLF, community stakeholders, Milton Road project team and works management to put together a plan to address the pending problem at junctions like Arbury Road and Milton Road. Did you want to respond to that, Paul, or would you prefer I do, or what do you want to do on that question?
I'm happy for you to respond.
Right. The understanding is that the Milton Road project is the Milton Road project, and that if residents do want to form a working group to address the issues that are raised here, then that's perfectly proper for them to do so and to provide their intelligence to the Milton Road project team. But the Milton Road project team is not able to become involved in a working group in relation to that particular issue. It's very happy to receive information and intelligence from a working group, but not to be a part of that working group. So then to questions from Michael Page. Michael, do you want to ask these questions because you're present? It'd be nice to have another voice. Do you have your questions? You're on mute, Michael.
Okay, I've unmuted. I think the first question is possibly answered. We're very keen to understand at what timeline in the construction phase the Highworth Avenue planters will be removed. I guess that's probably halfway through, but perhaps the communications team will be able to tell us more about that. But secondly, most important is that there's the landscape drawings that we've seen online, which implies that the use of swales on a large section of the road, as far as I can see, they will be planted with 35 grams per square meter of wildflower seeds and nothing much else. Now they're very nice, but this will result in large stretches of that verge becoming unkempt during most of the year. And that's at variance with the original vision of the GCP Executive Board. Now, we do understand the value of swales as a means of sustainable drainage, but can we not have a mixed planting consisting of low growing shrubs to give a greener corridor throughout the year? That's a very important question. And shall I wait for the answer or ask another one?
Perhaps if we have an answer then, is that you, Paul? To answer about the swales and the planting?
Livia, my understanding is that wildflower is mixed with a grass, but Livia needs to confirm that.
Right. Thanks, Livia. He's coming. Oh, that's funny. There's something wrong with your microphone, Livia. It may be best to go out and come back in, and then we'll go back to that question.
Yes, if I could just reiterate that a lot of residents' memory goes back to having just grass verges throughout the length. We do understand, though, that swales are good for drainage. We'd just like to see it green, please, rather than brown. The final question, I think, on my list has to do with the provision of public art. There was much made of this in earlier meetings, and we did see some interesting ideas from WSP consultants about how this could be achieved. For example, at the Arbury Road, at the Asham Road Library crossing. So will public art continue to be something that we should be able to take advantage of? Thank you.
Paul, is this you about the public art? He's dropped off.
No, sorry, I'm still here.
Oh, good.
I was mute. Regarding public art, can we come back to that? I just need to discuss with Livio first.
Sure, certainly. Yes.
We'll come back to that question.
Yeah. So we'll come then to the question from Kathy Orban. Kathy Orban's a resident on Milton Road and wants to follow up on the parking mitigation measures that have been previously discussed. And Kathy Orban has asked about this previously. The whole question of mitigated loss of parking on Milton Road. Residents currently rely on on-road parking. Those living at the Elizabeth Way Highworth Avenue roundabout have been assured during the consultation that they'll be able to park in nearby side roads if parking on Milton Road is removed. Currently, residents on the south side of Milton Road are part of the Triangle parking area and not part of the north side parking schemes. Asham, Hurst Park, well, Hurst Park Estate does not have one yet. It may or it may not. There's unambiguous data that the Triangle scheme would not have adequate space for residents if this becomes a parking scheme. Has the south side of Milton Road now been included in north side parking schemes through a traffic regulation order as part of the GPC project to ensure south side residents who have lost their parking will actually be able to access alternative parking on the north side? If not, what is required to make this happen? And would you be kind enough to let Ms. Orban know the progress to addressing this, specifically endorsing those on the south side of Milton Road with all certainty being part of the north side parking schemes? I think that we did address this earlier in the meeting, and I just reiterate, and then Paul may come in on this too, that as I said, we are very well aware that there are issues of parking, and it really needs to be addressed as a part of the Greater Cambridge Partnership responsibility now for residents' parking schemes. And we, when I say we, I mean that the councillors in the area will work with all due haste in a proper manner to ensure that we have a consultation that's carried out properly. There has to be an informal consultation, then a formal consultation to see whether Hurst Park Estate, for example, wants to have a residents parking scheme, the Elizabeth parking scheme, whether they want to have one, and then we will have to address the issue with the Asham parking scheme as well to see if there can be some accommodation for the residents who will definitely lose parking on Milton Road, but for the residents in the whole area, because we realise that it's a pressing issue. And I hope that that's satisfactory, Ms. Orban, but it's the best answer that I can give at this time. Paul may wish to add something, but I'm not sure.
No, I think you've covered it all there, Jocelyn.
Great.
I think this is best addressed through looking at the wider area, to be honest, and as you suggested.
Right, thank you. And then we have questions from Charles Nisbet, who is present too. So Charles, may we hear your dulcet tones? Thank you.
Well, thank you for my dulcet tones. Most of the issues that I raised with you in advance have already been covered in other people's questions. I'm not going to reiterate them. There was the one, though, that we need to have, when this is all finished, we need to have speed cameras in here. how do we set about it?
Well, now, perhaps if I hand over to Mike Sargent, because Mike Sargent is our expert on speed cameras. Mike, perhaps you'd like to answer this.
I don't know about speed cameras. I know about speed display units. I mean, usually speed cameras happen when there have been deaths on the road, I'm afraid. So there aren't that many speed cameras around, Charles, around the city. But you're absolutely right. Of course, it's very difficult to stop people speeding.
It's a racetrack, Mike. It's a racetrack.
Understood, Charles. Understood. And it's a big issue all around the city, to be honest. And some permanent solutions to that are obviously ideal, but certainly the experience over the years is that it's very difficult to get speed cameras on roads.
Well, that wasn't very reassuring. The other point, Jocelyn, is to back up the thing that's been put in the chat by Mary Pountain and many others. Could we please have written response to the questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. I noted Mary Pountain's question, and thank you for following up, Charles. Yes, there have been a lot of questions in the chat that we haven't been able to address. We've addressed some of them, but we'll certainly make sure that the questions need to be put up on the Greater Cambridge Partnership site with responses to them. That's very clear. Now, there is just one other pre-question from Lillian Runblad. Now, it relates to Histon Road, but because the issue is a concern about diversion into Histon Road, I think it's appropriate to put it. Lillian Runblad asks, says that there have been 2 years of the A14 diversions and 2 years of road construction with Histon Road, and now to come 2 years with the Milton Road diversions, and most likely another with reconstruction of projected damages to Histon Road. This is Ms. Rundbland's assessment. The signalling system at the Victoria Huntingdon Histon Road junction is not working, and that of course will create a problem that exists at the present. But if there are diversions into Histon Road, that will exacerbate it, and the HGVs from Histon Road turning into Victoria Road, which they shouldn't be doing, are dangerously mounting pavements and cycle lanes, or perhaps hitting pedestrian signals. And the Histon Road Area Residents Association therefore kindly asks the Greater Cambridge Partnership to consider a different solution with less impact on residents along Histon and Victoria roads. So that really is a question for Dan, because it goes to the issue of diversions. Will there be diversions on Histon Road? And are you able to respond to that question for Mrs. Rundbland, please, Dan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so yes is the answer. There will be diversions via Histon Road on the nighttime closures. But to try and provide some reassurance or explanation of the thinking, in terms of what the alternatives look like, the other diversions would be via Huntingdon Road, and then they would require traffic via M11, A14 potentially out as far as Bar Hill to then be diverted back in. So it becomes substantial, and they're also through other residential areas. Similarly, if we was to divert out east through Fen Ditton, that route, has particular traffic sensitivities and is a lot longer route. In terms of the assurances I can provide, we're talking about nighttime closures only, when traffic volumes are much lighter. And this is a very similar but opposite route to, every time there was a night closure on Histon Road. And what I can say is throughout that whole period, we never had a single complaint come through from anybody on Milton Road about the nighttime traffic. So I'm very hopeful that this will be the same round when it's the opposite way.
Right, thank you. Now, there's been a concern in the chat about cycles on footpaths, that when the construction is going ahead, because of the number of cycles and also children cycling to school and so on, that they will be forced to be on the footpaths and therefore a danger to pedestrians, although prefer not to be. But can there be a response to that concern?
Sure. So I think in terms of construction, obviously I can't control where people ride their bikes, but what I can do is provide the routes and provide signage to advise of the warnings and the hazards, which is what we'll be doing. Ultimately, we're trying to find a safe balance for building this work, which doesn't involve closing a lane of direction for the entire period, which is why we're at the solution we're at. And I hope the mitigation measures we've spoken about tonight, with the reduction speed limit and the speed traffic monitoring vans to keep a close eye on that, will be enough to reassure people of the safe route.
Right. Now, I know that Councillor Gorthrop, you had a question that had arisen out of issues that residents had been raising, and I wonder if you'd like to ask that question now. I'm just trying to find the different roads that it relates to.
I am just looking. This came through on Twitter, so I will just pick up the Twitter and now I've got to try and find it. I have put it in the chat as well. So do you want to take another question while I find it?
Right. Okay. Thanks so much. Now, there has also been a question about bus stops, because a resident is concerned about the design of bus stops and a concern that they don't interfere with vision when people are driving along the road or cycling along the road or coming out of intersections and so on. So could we have some assurances about the design of bus stops, please? Paul, I think that's for you or for Livio.
I think for Livio, this one.
Yeah, not sure about the. Try again, Livio, to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Excellent. Yeah, good.
Finally.
Excellent.
I was just catching up with the answers. So I've provided a picture of the Copenhagen crossing and a picture of the demarcation curbs on the chart, so you should be able to see them. The demarcation curve is on Histon Road, so, and as Paul was saying, so you can also have a look at it. It's already installed. And in terms of swale and grass, we just basically we had a good discussions with various CCC departments, including the maintenance team, and what they wanted was something that was easy to maintain, something that was standard for them to maintain, because otherwise it would have been very difficult to maintain and it would have potentially caused problems later on. And that's why the swales, they include standard grass, so they can be maintained the same as a normal version. Also, the gradients, crossforce of the swales have been designed to take that into maintenance into consideration as well, so they will be easily accessible from the footway without any upstands. So that's the reason why we went down that route. There are some rain gardens or some junctions that obviously a bit more difficult to maintain, but they are localized locations, so they're not along the entire length, and they give obviously quite a lot of additional benefits in terms of wildlife and so on. What was the last question? Sorry, I missed about the bus stops.
Oh, the design of the bus stops. The concern is that the bus stops not be designed so that they interfere with vision of cars or motorists or cyclists, and particularly if they're coming into junctions and so on, or coming around corners. Sorry.
Yeah, well, we have considered visibility. We have spent quite a lot of time designing bus stops, considering all criteria, including visibility between obviously for motorized vehicles at junctions, visibilities between cyclists and pedestrians, visibility between cyclists and motorized vehicles. So we have looked into visibility and considered visibility in great detail, and also taking into consideration all the fact that that bus stop design is now standard in Cambridge.
Thank you, Livio. Councillor Gorstrip Wood, it was Kendall Way and Ramsden Square, a question about Kendall Way and Ramsden Square.
Yes, and I've actually written it in the chat as it came to me. So there were concerns on the national cycle route from Ramsden Square to Kendall Way. Now, I don't know whether there is a national, I'm sorry, is this really a national cycle route over the crossing? So I'm quoting that. And then concerns about how busy Kendall, the crossings are and the road is, Kendall Way to Woodhead Drive. And there was a request that the busway be removed, or the dedicated busway, and the verge retained. So I am quoting what the resident has tweeted to me.
Right. And just talking about mentioning the bus lane, that reminds me, a part of Matthew Danish's question was about the length of the bus lane. The length of bus lanes and bus lanes at all were a rather large and significant issue at the beginning of this scheme. And there seems to be an impression gained that the bus lane has become more elongated than was in the original agreed design. So that's a question for Paul or for Livio. Livio, perhaps. The length of the bus lane.
Well, the bus lanes, they've been, designed like years ago, really. Well, we looked at them at a concept design stage, taking into consideration all factors, and there've been no changes, really no changes in the past 2 to 3 years. And all the drawings submitted, they've shown no changes in relation to the strategy for bus lane. I don't know, Paul, if you want to add anything to that.
I think the question might relate to more to the bus lane to the north of King's Hedges that leads to the busway. And at some point, that bus lane was extended past was it Lovell Road? So while the curb line wasn't shifted, the taper into the bus lane was just slightly modified. But that, as you said, that happened quite a few years ago. So it's been through various iterations of publication.
Yeah.
That is what the basis of the question is, and it's to do with a particularly narrow part of foot and cycle path at that point.
Yes, Paul, did you have a response to that? It was, I'll try to go back to it, sorry. It was that part, and just that the road at that part is particularly narrow. Therefore, lengthening the bus lane means that there's less space for cyclists and so forth. But my understanding of what you're saying, Paul, is that that length of that bus lane has not changed in recent times. It's been that length on the project.
Correct.
From when the project was really ultimately agreed to.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Last iteration. So in terms of that section, we are having another look at it, the crossing at Lovell Road. So basically we have the width of the combined footpath cycleway in the crossing area is approaching 5 meters. When you give 2 meters for the waiting zone for the crossing, you obviously got 3 meters left to squeeze the cycleway and the footway through, which goes slightly below what would usually be standard, albeit for a very small length, a pinch point over a small length. So we need to take that into consideration and have a final look at it to see if we accept it in design terms or whether we need to modify the solution.
Thank you. Now, there's been a question in the chat that could there please be a clear indication of what species will be planted on the swales, and could this information be conveyed, if not necessarily now? It would be good if it could be conveyed now.
So just to clear up the confusion, the swales will be planted with grass.
Right.
And the wildflower mix is just was an idea of the landscape designer, I think, just to introduce a bit of colour at certain times of the year to the swales. So that is just the mix that will be applied within the grassed areas.
Thank you.
And in the swales as well, there will obviously be the tree planting that's shown on the landscape diagrams.
Good. Now, I've noted that some members of the local liaison forum haven't asked raised any issues. Now, if you do want to raise issues now, please do it now. Perhaps if we go round, Councillor Machini, did you have anything in particular that you wanted to raise? You don't need to raise anything, but perhaps you might.
No, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting meeting, and let's put it this way. I hope that we are going to get a sort of nice FAQ about some of the issues that have been raised in the chat, and I would like to encourage everybody to get in touch with me if they have. Especially, I've seen there was one thing that was raised very quickly around mobile, oh for God's sakes, what are they called? MVASs, mobile vehicle activated signs, which might be a potential stopgap solution when we can't get the police to agree speed cameras. I've got a couple of them that I've already agreed to come to King's Edges, and I can ask for more. If people think that's a good idea, get in touch with me. I know we probably, we will have a different picture at the end of the works, but these things take a long time to be approved. So get in touch with me now. And for that or for anything else, everyone knows where to find me, so do get in touch. Thank you. Thank you, Jocelyn, for all the work. It's been 2 intense hours, but it's been very useful.
Thank you, Councillor Machini. Now, Councillor Sargent, you did respond to something, but I asked you a question. So did you have anything in particular that you wanted to raise at this stage?
Well, it's just now we've got the detailed designs. I still don't see any progress at the bottom of Milton Road to access Mitcham's Corner, although I've raised this even with Peter Blake, the Transport Director, and it looks as though there's going to be a concertina effect as people come down the cycleway towards Mitcham's Corner, and somehow have to negotiate onto Mitcham's Corner itself across the zebra crossing, and that's exactly where the scheme ends. And I thought I had the agreement from Paul and Peter Blake that they would do some improvements to get access onto Mitcham's Corner. Thanks.
Paul, did you have a response?
So in terms of, so we feel that we need to basically reinstate that zebra crossing because it's pretty faded out. So that's one thing that we need to do. The zebra crossing on both sides, but at the moment that's kind of we're a bit stuck in terms of offering any further solution. So unless there's a concrete idea in terms of what can be done to improve the access onto Mitcham's Corner, then I mean it would be good to hear thoughts on that, so potentially add it to this project.
I think we need to have a specific meeting about Mitcham's Corner. It's too big to discuss it now at this stage. But yes, I think.
Yeah, so we always anticipate. We know that the zebra crossing at the end is faded and virtually invisible now. So I envisaged that we would repaint that, make it functional again. But the off-road cycle route on the inbound side leads to that zebra crossing, so people can obviously cross at that zebra, get into the island, and then there's a signalised crossing across to Mitcham's Corner Island.
Yeah, I suppose if I can just say, Justin, my issue is there's no provision for a stopping area. Currently, if you want to get onto it, you can stop in the road, but the size of the cycle lane on the inbound, people will be just queuing up, backing up Milton Road trying to get onto the zebra crossing, especially at very busy times.
Okay.
And it does need some sort of waiting area to get onto the zebra crossing. Otherwise, there will be competition with pedestrians.
Okay, we'll have a look. We're looking at as I said, we're looking at the other side anyway, in light of some of the road safety audit comments. So I'll ask WSP to just look at that and see if anything else can be done there.
Great. I know you wanted to ask something, Michael Page, but we'll just come to Jamie Deal first to ask. Jamie, did you have anything to raise in particular?
Yes, I did raise my hand earlier.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. It's a rather complicated meeting. So, and I think linked to that, as others have noted, some really detailed written responses. And I know that will be a challenge to pull together from all these sources, but I'm sure the team, if we want to get the comms right, we want to get it off on a really good first footing. And I guess I would suggest within that we might want to try and split it out into the different topics as well, which maybe the chair and the members of the LLF can comment on. I guess one thing I'd be interested to see in that detail is almost zone by zone. We mentioned each of the construction phases. If we could actually see what cyclists and pedestrians will be expected to do at each phase, because I think it would be very useful for us to assess the safety levels, particularly when we do have cargo bikes, etc. It would be good for people partly as well, just to be prepared for that. On the question side, I did just want to check on that comms. Do we have comms out into the science park and some of the other sort of bigger employers about this work? I think it would be really useful to communicate to some of the commuters in the area through that means, because probably we'll be a bit focused on local residents at the moment. And actually, obviously, those commuters are going to be really, really critical. There was another question I had, which was probably more on the actual planning side, which I maybe missed in the slides, so apologies if I did. But on Arbury Road, I didn't quite understand what will happen when the work is going ahead on that junction. Will that be one of the sites where there would be a traffic light measure? Is that going to be the case? Or?
Yes. Yeah, so Union Lane will be closed and there'll be freeway traffic lights. And basically Arbury Road will be built half and half.
Right. And on that stage, would it be correct to assume that the Hurst Park Estate junction would be open by that point?
Yeah, so we're looking at the overall phasing to make sure we're not sending traffic back to another closed road or set of traffic management. So that overall phasing is taken into account in our main programme.
Well, I think there's where the risk will lie is that where you've drawn the red local routes, I would wonder, and I think this is a concern for some residents, that the Hurst Park whole estate could become very, very busy with cars effectively not wanting to go through the traffic lights and that issue and cutting that way, which it does happen to a degree at the moment, but I think would probably happen a lot more. And I do wonder if we can understand if there'll be any mitigations if that proves to be a real problem.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. I'll have a look at it.
Thanks so much, Councillor DL. Now, Councillor Gorthrope-Wood, did you have anything that you wanted to raise for yourself, because you kindly put the Twitter concern, and I thought you might have something for yourself.
Only that I think, good communication is absolutely key to this, and, to thank the members of Milton Road Residents Association for their questions. I do think that it is worth our while, if they can be written up and ordered by topic, and to reiterate some of the other points that have been made recently about, keeping the communication up, continuing. This is a complicated project, but I think it is one that is probably necessary. I live close to Histon Road, and in fact, I do think it's been an improvement in the end. So thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Gorthrope-Wood. Now, Michael Page, I think you had your hand up and you might have had another question.
Yes, I just would like to endorse what Jamie Daliel just said about the impacts of the lower part of Arbury Road, Milton Road Junction, both for the residents and commuters who use the lower part of that junction in Arbury Road, and also for the residents of the Hurst Park Estate who are likely to experience a rat run. And it seems unfortunate that it wouldn't be possible for the local stakeholders in that area to at least meet with somebody from either from GCP or construction team to figure out if there are any potential solutions. I think we shouldn't reject that idea. And then I just like to go back to that hobby horse earlier about the swales. I think there are people who really would like to know what that's actually going to look like. There are different types of grass, there are different types of plantings. Is there any way that the team could give us a visualization of how those might look and how they're going to be maintained? That was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Oh, gosh. That's very strange. I know it's going all right now. Good. So perhaps we could have that on the website, some indication of what species are to be used and the grass and so on. I think that residents would appreciate that very much. But
we can try and get a visualization of that. And just going back to the public art question earlier, I know it's something we've discussed on and off throughout the project, and it's something that hasn't been raised for the last 2 years, given the situation we've had. I'm not an expert in public art, I'm going to say that up front, and I think it would be more appropriate that kind of the local people will get together and choose something or develop something, and that the project just agrees a specific budget to go towards it. So a small appropriate budget for public art, for example, that we need to agree.
Sorry, when you said budget, of course, my eyes lit up. I mean, there are residents, of course, there's Maureen Mace, who's one of the local artists, and there are many local artists who would be interested. So certainly, I think that will certainly be done, Paul. Now, Charles Nisbet, did you have anything extra to raise before we conclude?
No, I have nothing extra, but to congratulate you on the chairing of the meeting. Thank you very much.
That'd be lovely, Charles. Thanks so much. And now, actually, yes, Councillor Bradnam, I thought you might have something to conclude with too.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Yes, and yes, thank you. It's always difficult when there's so many questions, and of course, what we are encountering is that many of the people who are taking part today might not have been party to the earlier discussions that we had in earlier forums. Some of them will be, but so many of the things we've been discussing will be unfamiliar to them. But I just wondered if Paul van den Bolt could just reiterate to us the purpose, the original purpose of the Milton Road Improvement Scheme, which, as I recall, the only reason we got the money was because it was predicated on a priority bus route into the town. And the purpose of this, as I recall, was to try to reduce congestion. And I wondered, Paul, if you can just remind the people here, obviously it makes sense to look at cycling and pedestrians at the same time, but I just wanted, if you could just remind us where the money came from and what it's predicated on.
Okay, so that's going back a long way. So the funding comes through the City Deal grant funding that has been given by government to the Cambridge local authorities, which include Cambridgeshire County Council, the City Council and South Cambridgeshire, also in partnership with the university. It is a £500 million programme over 15 years, divided up into a first tranche that was 100 million. We've now passed our first gateway, so we've received the second tranche of 200 million, and working towards another gateway, I think in 2025, where if we're succeeding in our aims and goals, we should secure the final 200 million. And this is match funded by local funding, development, Section 106 contributions, etc., to provide a programme worth almost, I don't think it's quite £1 billion, it's almost £1 billion for not just transport, but there's some other aspects of that are being delivered across the Greater Cambridge area. So the purpose of the Milton Road project, as you said, was to prioritise public transport in and out of the city. And in the early days, some of the first designs for Milton Road included length of busway inbound and outbound along the whole length of Milton Road. That was subsequently questioned by the local liaison forum, and resident associations were formed who got involved in the design process. And we've gradually turned the design a little bit so that it not only prioritises public transport, but also looks to improve facilities for walking and cycling. So, for example, we've put additional crossing points on Milton Road for pedestrians and cyclists. We've created a complete inbound segregated cycle lane off-road, as well as the outbound segregated cycle lane, also off-road, mostly behind the verge. And as mentioned earlier and displayed in the chat, the Copenhagen Crossings that give priority for pedestrians and cyclists over all the side roads. So we've still got some bus lanes within the project, which we feel are important because Milton Road is a key road for public transport in and out of the city, especially given the links with the guided busway, which obviously serves the route out to St Ives, but also in future may also spur off to serve a new route up to Waterbeach, new town at Waterbeach. So that's the purpose. Is that
thank you, Paul. So I think it's helpful for people here to understand the evolution of the project, and that's really helpful. Thank you, Paul.
I should also say that the local residents also emphasise the importance of maintaining kind of the element of landscaping. So
absolutely,
in some cases, we've had to balance the kind of the landscaping and the transport provision across the scheme.
Thanks so much. Now there is this local liaison forum was billed as the final. I have to say though that has come up in the chat from Maureen Mace. Could we have another local liaison forum where we can meet in person, as questions on chat can be misread? And it means those without the internet are not accustomed to Zoom can make their voices heard if we meet in person. I do want to emphasise that this is not the final meeting of the local liaison forum, that we're very well aware that of course the communications that David Charlesworth has set out are excellent. There's no argument about that. And we know from the Histon Road scheme that the construction people were good in responding immediately. But we also know that it's absolutely vital that the community be able to be engaged in a way that is organised rather than having to ring up individually with their concerns. So I do want to say quite clearly that if others on the local liaison forum, of course, I'm not going to have a meeting and be there all by myself on Zoom or in person, but I do think it's unwise to say that the local liaison forum is at an end, because it does have a role to play to ensure that the scheme can be implemented and can be constructed, and that the views of residents can be properly taken into account all along the way. This is just the beginning, in one sense, of the project, in the sense of the construction, and to leave it with us just disbanding at the beginning of the construction phase would be irresponsible. And I don't think that we should be agreeing with that. And I've made the view very clear to the Greater Cambridge Partnership that the local liaison forum is not at an end. This is not the final meeting. It is simply the final meeting before the construction phase. Now, if people wish to disagree with me, that's up to you. But I feel very strongly that the community has to be involved in an organised way, not in a piecemeal way. So, but let me say thank you so much to everybody for attending. Thank you so much to the officers and for the presentations that really were very clear. And thank you that we will have the questions and answers up on the website with some promptitude so that people will be able to see their questions and see the answers to them and see others' questions and the answers to those. So as they say, without further ado, I'd like to say good evening and thank you. And we shall meet again as an LLF, hopefully in person, so that those who couldn't be on Zoom can meet with us and make their voices heard, as Maureen Macer said. Thank you. Great. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
Bye. Bye.